Hello, so we are going to do these rhythm lessons on Screencastify, which means I need you to participate on your own. I really don't have a way of checking this since we can't do group lessons together, but I'm going to trust that you are doing activities on these screens, not just watching me present them. So I'm going to put this in presentation mode. What kind of note is this? And I want you to either say it out loud or write it down. Don't just think it. If you said eighth note, you would be correct. So an eighth note looks like that when it's alone, or it looks like this. Sorry, let me go back. It looks like this when there's two next to each other. You can actually beam four with each other too. So these four could be together. It doesn't matter which way you write them. I think the reason they beam them together is to just have really less ink on the page. So you've been doing eighth note pulses when we do this. So we keep the quarter note beat when we keep the beat on our leg. And we keep the eighth note pulse like this. If you have been in choir before, what do you say when you see eighth notes? You say T. So almost all of the notes are ta, whether they're quarter notes, half notes, whole notes, two eighth notes tied together, but a single eighth note, anytime you see an eighth note, you say T. So if we were to do this screen together, I would say T, 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 T. Okay? Now let's go to the next slide. Same thing, except we took away some of the stems, so you're going to snap on those, and I will try to move me around when we get there. Starting at line 1. 1 and 2 and ready and go. T, 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 T. You can see with that, even like my brain, I've been doing this forever and it still gets confused about what I should be doing at any given time. All right, moving on to the next slide. So even more missing notes that you're going to snap on. Let's start at the top. Look ahead. Missing notes or rests are most difficult at the beginning of a line. So what line begins with a rest? Is it line 1, 2, 3, or 4? Say it out loud. You should have said 4. Here we go from the top. 1 and 2 and ready and go. T, 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 T. Let's do those last two lines again. Right now, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to practice those lines. So start with T, T, a little slower on your own. Starting here on the third line, practice the last two lines. Right. Here we go. Line 3 and line 4 only. 5, 6, 7, go. T, 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 T. And that rhythm is meant to trick you, confuse you, keep you on your toes. Same thing as before, but now we have the eighth rest. The eighth rest looks like a 7. So why? I don't know. It's just how they wrote it. So now we know the eighth rest looks like a 7 with a weird hair day. So that's what you're doing. When you see those, you're just still snapping like we did before. Ready? 5, 6, 7, go. T, 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 T. All right, moving on. Same complicated bottom line. Move this out of the way. Okay. So, same complicated bottom line. Here we go. So it's lines 3 and 4, just like we practiced before, but remember, those are tricky. Starting at the top, 1 and 2 and ready and go. T, 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 T. How'd you do? If you didn't do so well, I want you to pause this right now and redo that slide. So what do we have here? More happy notes. I love how you always notice that they look happy when they are together. What's this symbol called? Say it out loud or write it down. Don't just think it in your head. It's called a tie. When you're talking about rhythms being added together, it's a tie. Now it's 2 eighth notes that are tied together. So if it's 2 eighth notes tied together, do you still say T? No, because 2 eighth notes tied together equals 1 what kind of note? Say it out loud. 2 eighth notes tied together equals a quarter note. It gets 2 pulses and you need to say ta for this right here. Okay? So first thing I want you to do is practice line 4. Line 4 is tricky, so I want you to practice line 4 on your own because it switches between T and ta. So hopefully you practice it a couple times on your own. Now let's do just line 4 again with me. I'm going to wait for that little thing to disappear. Okay, 5, 6, 7, go. T, ta, T, T, ta, T. And that is a rhythm we'll see in one of our upcoming songs. Do line 4 one more time. 5, 6, 7, go. T, ta, T, T, ta, T. All right, from the top. 1 and 2 and ready and go. T, 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 T. Ta, 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 T, T, ta, T, 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 ta, T, T, ta, T. How'd you do? Right now I want you to pause this video and redo this slide on your own. All right, moving on to the next slide. All right, so all I did for this slide was take out the ties. But now that the ties are gone, you still have to think, look down at this quarter note, you still think ta, you still think 2 of these eighth note pulses, okay? So let's go from the top. I'm going to give you a count off, and I want you to practice 1 time on your own while I keep the pulse. And the beat, remember, 2 pulses for every beat. Okay, so you practice on your own, I'll keep it going. And then we'll do it together. 1 and 2 and ready and go. Line 1. 2. Line 3. Line 4. All right, together. 1 and 2 and ready, go. T, 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 T. Ta, 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 T, T, ta, T, 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 ta, T, T, ta, T. I want you to pause it and do it one more time on your own. Did you pause? And you can do it at any tempo on your own. It may be that I'm going a little fast for you, and that's okay. Maybe you count off like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and go. T, 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 T. Ta, 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 T, T, ta, T, 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 ta, T, T, ta, T. Maybe when you have it paused, you only do 1 line at a time until you get that 1 line right, and then you do 2 lines, and you get 2 lines right. Whatever you need to do, You may do. All right. Here we go. 1 and 2. Oh, sorry, I meant to go over this first. Let's see how many notes are tied together here. How many eighth note pulses? 1 plus 1 plus 1, so 3. What about down here? A quarter note gets how many eighth note pulses? Say it out loud. 2. And then this is 1, so 2 plus, that tie equals a plus, 1 is 3. So it's going to be 3 of these. Will you just practice this for me? Just this note with 3 tied together. Ta, and what comes after it? A T. So try it again. Ta, T, ta, T. And same down here. Ta, T, ta, T. All right? So let's do this whole page. Ready? 1 and 2 and 3 and go. T, 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 T. Ta, T, ta, T, ta, T, ta, T. Right now, with your pen and paper or pencil and paper or type it in a note somewhere, I want you to write down what is another way to write this rhythm. Remember, it is 3 eighth notes tied together, and that should be your hint right there, the number 3. What is another way to write this rhythm? And I'm talking specifically about these 3 eighth notes tied together, which is the same as this quarter note tied to 1 eighth note. But there is a way to simplify it, and we talked about it in our last rhythm lesson. If you said dotted quarter note, you'd be correct. So 3 eighth notes tied together equals a quarter note tied to an eighth note equals a dotted quarter note. So every time you see a dotted quarter note, how many eighth note pulses fit in it? 3. So you're going to always think 3 eighth note pulses here. So here's some more of that rhythm. I'm going to move my picture up to the top part of the screen because you already know it's just straight eighth notes across the top line. Ready? 1 and 2 and ready and go. T, 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 ta, T, ta, T, ta, T, ta, T, ta, T, ta, T. Sorry, that little slide thing keeps popping up at the bottom. Right where I need you to work. All right, new rhythm. Slide 12, new rhythm. I'll move this as we go. First thing I want to do is go through and say how many pulses each note gets. So say it out loud. How many pulses does the dotted quarter note get? You should have said 3. Eighth note, 1. Dotted quarter, 3. Eighth note, 1. 1, 1. Regular quarter, 2. 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1. Let's wait for it to clear, and then down at the bottom it's 1, 3, 1, 3. So without me, I want you to practice on your own. Practice the slide a little slower. 1 and 2 and ready and go. All right. How did that go? Be honest. If you are confused at this point, you should be pausing and sending me an email saying, Mrs. Davis, I'm not understanding this. And we'll have to figure out another way to work together because the video method might not work. So here we go. 3 pulses followed by 1 pulse. 1, 2, ready, go. Ta, ti, ta, ti, 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 ta, ti, ti, ta, ta, ti, ta, ti, ti, ta, ti, ta. Done. Slide 13. This might look a little easier for you. How many pulses for this? 4. What was that called? Half note. How many pulses for a quarter note? 2. Quarter note? 2. Quarter rest? 2. 2 snaps. Eighth note? 1. Eighth note? 1. Eighth rest? 1 snap. Eighth note? 1 pulse. Eighth note? 1 snap. Sorry, did I say eighth note? I meant eighth rest. Eighth note, 1 pulse. 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, and say this one. How many pulses does a whole note get? It gets 8 because it takes up a whole line, whole measure. All right, so from the beginning. 1 and 2 and ready and go. Ta, ta, ta. T, 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 ta, T, T, ta, T, ta. Always wipe the slate clean when you're done. All right, I'm going to count it again, and I'm going to keep the pulse going, and you do the whole screen by yourself. Sorry, I have a dog down here who's trying for some attention. 1 and 2 and ready and go. If that did not go as well as you would like it to, I want you to pause and do it again, but slower. All right, slide 14. This is the last slide, so take a look at it. It looks like a lot because there's all these rests. All right, let's do this together. 1 and 2 and ready and go. Ta, ti, ta, ti, 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 ta, ta, ta. One more time, all together. 5, 6, 7, go. Ta, ti, ta, ti, 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 ta, ta, ta. These rhythms were kind of difficult, some of them. So if you had a difficult time with some of these, then I want you to go back and do this again on your own. Save the slideshow and go back and do it on your own.